I'm not gonna lie, because I went into this movie completely blind. I, I legit thought, like, whether we're on the podcast or not, I legit thought the genders were completely reversed from this image of the movie.
Oh, from looking at like the poster cover.
I thought that the white-haired person was a girl, and then the long-haired black-haired person was a boy.
Yeah, from the poster, like Agito and Tula do look a little swapped in that sense, especially since Agito is essentially wearing a crop top, and it looks like Tula is wearing like a really punk rock white T-shirt kind of thing going on.
Yeah,
I see that
it's
now.
Kind of funny, but yeah, it's really interesting. I went into this pretty blind too, and I mean, I didn't really have any expectations going into it, and leaving it, I didn't really have any expectations either. Like, nothing was really met nor not met.
Yeah, the way that I feel about this generally is this is kind of how, when a random friend comes up to you and spews you off a random fact about something, and then you're just like, oh, cool. And that's it. That's how I felt about this. Like, that's just it. I got done and I was like, okay, that was cool.
Yeah, the most that I can say is it was a better Avatar than James Cameron's Avatar.
But it was a worse Avatar.
It's not saying much.
But it was a worse Princess Mononoke than Princess Mononoke.
Yeah, and it didn't even come close to Pocahontas. I legit, I don't know. I didn't think it was terrible, but yeah, it wasn't like amazing either. It's weird because like everything that was in here, as far as like the plot goes, it felt like everything was there for a pretty decent story until maybe like the last 30 minutes, where it just kind of like turns into a Final Fantasy game. But it just felt weird because like everything felt rushed. Not that any of the scenes were necessarily bad. It was just that they felt like it's like someone sped it up by like 1.5 times on a VCR or something like that, and it's just like a little bit faster than what it should be.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I was thinking about this a little bit. I don't know if it was necessarily just rushed. I just felt like it felt like properly paced. I felt like there was no substance, no detail. Like,
that's the phrasing I was going to actually use for it.
Hitting the big points, and that was it. And I was like, you got this cool world, let's use it, actually.
Yeah, it's like if this were a Ghibli film, you would spend a lot of time around this plot, also exploring a little bit, showing a little bit of the world, and like adding to the mystery that is this new existence for these
And
people.
the thing about it is, like, again, it's like Matt, you said, you have this cool world and use it, and the movie's just like, Like, I mean, there's so many cool aspects of the world that this has set up. Like, that first opening sequence of, like, that plant dragon just straight up wrecking the moon. And the whole opening sequence of the tree experiment on the moon just going haywire. And everything being set up in such a fucking neat way. And then, soon after the opening, when Agito and Kane go down into the well to, like, sneak some water out, and they're surrounded by these fucking, like, tree druids that are just made of plants and such. And they have all this discussion of, the forest being sentient and everything. And there's all this setup for, like, God, this is some cool shit. Like, I want to learn about these fucking tree druids that are all, like, in sync and have these fucking, like, warlock, these fucking, like, Destiny Hunter cow looking things going on. And it's like, I'm just like, this is such a cool actual setup. These are fascinating little characters. It's not like these are unique to them. Like, I've seen this kind of thing before, but the way that you've set up and designed these things, just from, like, even an aesthetic standpoint, it looks really neat. I want to know more about these. Yeah. And it's like they're used in maybe like 2 or 3 scenes. Like, there's no deep explanation of it. Like, when we get the explanation of, oh yeah, that thing that happened on the moon, like, we fucked up an experiment. And that's it. It's like, that's all you're gonna say? Like, we're not going to get anything more in depth about this cool shit. It's like, no, we're going to rush
Yeah,
this, and then you're going to get a scene of, we're going to see Tula hugging a tree, and then, that's important.
And they keep adding all these characters that are very interesting. Like, I loved the 2 or 3 girls that were like the voices of the forest. That was a very interesting character to me. And that you had these actually like personifications of the forest that are allowed to speak, and they are directly talking with this matriarch in charge of the neutral city, and she was awesome, and it was very interesting. But you didn't even get into her character either, or anything about her backstory, or anything like that. I thought it was curious because there's a lot of substance here that could be explored, and it's not. That I was thinking, I wonder if this is an adaptation of something like a novel or a manga or something like that. No, it's original.
Yeah.
Which is strange to me because like they're just not giving us anything.
It's kind of really a shame because the most interesting characters in this entire film are the side characters. Like, Yolda is fucking fascinating. I think, Shunak, the other... So, like, I mean, we have essentially... Agito finds Tula in, like, this fucking underground thing, and she's, like, in a cryostasis thing, and it looks like the rest of the others in cryo have all died, except for this one other dude, Shunak, that got out. And he's a fucking fascinating character because... he is taking a very different approach to this overworld that, nature is not super happy with everything else with the surviving humans on the planet because they kind of fuck shit up. And, like, Shunak is one of those survivors, and spoiler alert, the whole arc where we find out, he's the reason everything got fucked up. And his whole point in coming to get that fucking moving volcano super weapon is to actually, like, undo his mistakes. Like, I think it's a really interesting motivation, and it's such a, like... He's such a neat character.
Yeah, he was legitimately a great bad guy for this story because you never really get the feeling that he's truly necessary, like all evil or anything like that. He has a lot to his character. Like, it's kind of like a Batman villain in this story in which, like, the bad guy is multifaceted and interesting and fascinating, and unless you're gonna get into, like, those really well-written stories of Batman's just kind of a dude that just beats the crap out of the multifaceted character. Like, so that's really a shame. I liked him a lot. I thought that his arc was fine. I thought that, him becoming one with the forest and all that other shit, that's fine. But it was like, he was a great character, but then you look at, like, the character Agito that we're, like, going around with, and I honestly did not care at all for him. I was just like, all right, cool, he's a character. All right, cool, he's gonna do something.
And I didn't even care for Tula either. Like, they didn't even bother to make her even remotely interesting. Like, she seemed like she could have had some cool stuff going on in the beginning, but the way they ended up writing her was just, she seems cool, and I totally understand, like, from her point of view, like, okay, she got totally swept up in this whole thing, and from the start, there's this crazy culture shock. She's like, oh, fuck, everything is totally not kosher right now. Like, stuff got messed up. And from the perspective of her being the daughter of, the scientists that, designed this thing to fix their world, of course she's going to be thinking, no, so forget your forest folk, I'm going to go fix stuff. Like, she actually has this perspective that totally makes sense to her. And, she ultimately ends up being a fucking damsel in distress because of course she is. And, she has no fucking agency whatsoever. Like, her entire existence for the rest of the arc after, she pulls her stuff out of the volcano is for her to cry at the base of a tree to get Agito back. Like, that's all. And,
it's really shitty because it's like, up until that moment, I actually did like her as a character because everything that she did made sense. She was, I loved that it was a fish out of water story in which she's not just an innocent individual purely, and she can take care of herself relatively. Like, And the very first thing that you see her do after she gets out of the pod is she breaks open the door and saves them both from the rushing water. I was like, okay, cool. The dude doesn't just randomly save the day. She actually has some agency to herself. And then whenever she's faced with a choice where it's like, do you want to go with these forest people or do you want to try and fix this like your father was trying to do? She's like, fuck yeah, I'll just go with my father. And she even tells Agito, I'm going this way. Sorry, but I've known you for like 48 hours.
Yeah.
And then whenever he comes to save her, once again, she realistically is like, I don't know why you came to save me. Like, I'm sorry, but this is what I'm going to try and do. I'm going to try and fix this because I want my old world back. Everything about that made sense to me. And as a character, I didn't think any of that was necessarily bad. That said, it is shitty that, like, she started off as kind of cool where she breaks them out and they finally get to the surface and then she's learning about the world and that's interesting. But then as soon as she leaves Neutral City, that initial point, then she just becomes a plot device of what's his name?
Shunak.
The pseudo bad guy. She becomes a plot device of Shunak, and then she becomes a heroine to save for Agito. And while it was cool that she was like, I don't know why you saved me, I don't want to be saved. That was cool. Everything after that was then, okay, now I do want to be saved.
Like, it's just such a fucking... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say that it just seemed like standard fare, so much of it. Like, I feel like it was just nothing. Like, I mean, it was a story, but it was just... Like, it had, like, so many cool workings, but the characters, it just... I felt like they were just there half the time, and there was just no, like, especially near the end. Like, I just lost all will to even care.
It's just like...
You can't care about characters, or...
Yeah, because, like... Because, like... None of the characters have any solid, distinct, interesting development except for like fucking Shunak and his commander underneath him. I think her name's Jessica or something like that. The blonde-haired armored woman that takes over the mountain efforts. And
even it's kind of funny because like towards the end of the film, she starts to actually become a character because she wasn't for most of the movie.
It's really great.
And I cared about her more than
I did.
like they're some of the only ones that have any interesting development because like if you look at Agito and Tula as main characters, like the ones you would expect to have character development, Agito's development throughout the movie is he starts as Agito and then he ends as Agito just with tree powers. There's no development aside from that. And then Tula goes from, popsicle girl to, fucking like popsicle girl out of the popsicle. And she likes trees.
She goes from being she goes from being homesick to giving up her old home symbolically to like live in this world. Which I still feel very iffy about because for her character, I just don't know if it makes that much sense.
Like, I mean,
I feel like I need some more explanation.
I guess it does.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess it does to a point that she's like, oh, okay, well, my father was gonna blow the shit out of everything. Well, maybe it's just better if we just let nature win this one. But I don't know. I kind of liked that they set everything up initially as here's the forest, here's mankind, neutral city is neutral ground, and it is a balance between these two things.
Right.
That was cool to me, and I thought that's what was going to be the end, like the end thing that we're supposed to take away from this movie is, we have to have a balance to everything kind of situation where it's like we should love the forest, we should respect it, and we should work with it, but at the same time, as humanity, we do want to develop and better ourselves. And then it turned out to just be like, no, fuck all that. We're just gonna love trees. It was very strange. There was no balance. It was just going from one extreme to the other. Going from all humanity, fuck the forest, let's just go back to the way things were, to, all right, fuck all that, let's just be trees.
Yeah, and I just like, I don't know, it just seems so odd in that, we had the city of Laguna, which was a more militarized way of actually approaching nature, and it seemed like that was their actual approach to it even before Shunak got there, and kind of somewhat more radicalized it. So it's weird that, like, we don't have much development of like, okay, like there is that whole fucking other city of Laguna there, and even though they did join the side of trying to divert the volcano stuff, it's not like that was a change in their perspective. Like they were literally just
Right.
thinking, oh hey, we should probably save people's lives. It's not like Laguna had anything against Neutral City.
Right.
They're fucking Neutral City.
All it is-
They're the neutral point, and they kind of like the forest a bit, but that doesn't bother Laguna too much until Shunak gets there. So it's like it's
Yeah,
weird that we don't get any like post mountain craziness shit. Like there's no post Istok check-in on Laguna. Like we just see cleanup efforts for Neutral City, and that's like it. It's just.
Yeah, and during the credits, there's a whole thing in which like it shows them planting a flower, and then after a couple of more lyrics of the ending song, it shows the entire world now covered in trees. And I'm like, well, that seems a bit odd because like the only thing that we saw in that climactic end battle is that Laguna basically had a truce with the forest. It was like, okay, this is way more fucked up than what we're dealing with, so let's take care of this fucking mountain. And then it should have gone back to the same rivalry that they had, where they're not entirely sold on the forest and they want to try and do it on their own.
Yeah.
But we just don't see that, and we have no explanation for that. I think honestly a great comparison for this story is Nazca and the Valley of the Wind, in that both are about coming to terms with nature and accepting that, and then there's the whole enemy party that is actively against nature and like trying to destroy things. And I think that that's a pretty good comparison to have, because I would say one of the major differences in idea between, or in how it works between these two movies, is that I actually care about every single character in Nazca and the Valley of the Wind, and I only give a shit about half of the characters in this one, and even then the ones that I do give a shit about barely have any speaking parts or anything. That's really unfortunate, and that's really what hurts it, because both Nazca and Origins, I would argue Nazca kind of has a little bit cooler of a world, but both have really interesting worlds and really interesting ideas that are going on in the background. But like, I don't give a shit about the characters in this, so I would rather watch a movie about like Nazca that not only I give a shit about the characters, but I also get to delve deeper into that world. Whereas we don't even scratch the surface of this one.
I almost feel like this, and this is not something I say very often, but I almost feel like this would have been better as a TV series and not a movie.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like,
or at least like a mini series, like an OVA. Give us like 4 or 5 episodes to really like dig our teeth.
Yeah, for sure. Like some fucking Blue Submarine 6 kind of shit. Like, I don't
exactly.
like it. I still don't think it would have been great, but I feel as though if we had a little more time in this world and maybe a bit more actual world building, in that we get details about this as opposed to just being like shown the spectacle of the world. I don't know.
Yeah, I think they could have helped it a lot.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it would be hard to fix the busted main characters that we have, but
that's the thing. You would have to completely rewrite the 2 main characters. But if you did that and then just delved a little bit into the world, I would have really enjoyed this. I would have genuinely enjoyed this. This would have been fascinating.
I mean, that's not to say I didn't like it, but
I
did.
think it was fine. Like, besides the problems we listed, I think it was pretty cool. Like, the music and the art, like, all that was good.
Yeah, it's a pretty nice spectacle.
It was also interesting seeing all of the like obvious inspirations for this too, because like if you look at all of the ships and everything that are firing at the mountain in the ending battle, they're ripped straight out of Star Wars, and I love it. Like, it looks so great. It looks like a weird mechanization of like it's like the weird smooth futuristic stuff of like episodes 1, 2, and 3 of Star Wars, and then you add like some interesting like mechanical elements to it to make it seem a little bit more
like
grounded.
the walking stick robots are kind of neat and all that jazz.
Yeah, but it was very obvious like Star Wars references, and then they kept on showing this picture of like flipping between the volcano and the neutral city at the far end of the desert, and I'm like, this is straight up the Battle of Minas Tirith. with like Return of the King, and I thought that was so funny, especially because I think Return of the King came out like just a little bit before this did.
It's an interesting comparison to draw.
Well, it looked exactly like it. It really did. It was weird. Yeah, Return of the King came out in 2003, so that would have been fresh on the minds of people if they were inspired by it like internationally.
Yeah.
But like a lot of those things looked very, very similar, and I thought it was very cool. Even this deep, heartfelt, emotional moment in the volcano between our two main characters, I was like, Mr. Frodo,
God.
I can't carry it, but I can carry you.
But yeah, I don't know. Like, you know, it was fine. It was a level or so above inoffensive. So
yeah,
in our backlogger scale.
Apparently, we have this scale now that we're just using.
No, I think on Mal I gave it. I would. They don't have 0.5s, which really annoys me. But I would probably give it like a 6.5 or a 7. 7 pushing it, but honestly, yeah. Just because what is there as far as like a lot of the really neat stuff, like the animation, the backgrounds, especially when we actually do get some of that world building, I love it. So I loved that. And some certain parts of the animation were very cool. Like you mentioned, the opening segment of the moon like just breaking into chunks and being launched at Earth was very cool because it looked like comets, but then every now and then it would warp and become plant-like and a dragon, and then it would warp back to being a comet breaking up in the atmosphere, and then warp back to the dragon. It's like, so
honestly,
cool.
That opening sequence is probably about my favorite thing in the whole movie, if we're being fully honest.
Yeah,
just because
really cool.
of the, it really is, and just the way that it kind of
really
sets it up with this, the way it sets it up with like that opening monologue, kind of talking about almost the, talking about it in like mythological terms almost. In such a way, and then the fucking spectacle of how that thing actually goes down, it seems to set up such a very cool precedent for how this thing is going to go, and it doesn't deliver on what it set out at the beginning there, and it's just disappointing in that sense.
Yeah, and then on top of that, I liked the well scene with the druids. I thought, like you said, that was very cool. I very much enjoyed the animation for the scene in which the trees give Agito their enhanced.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Like the way that that's set up, and like it pans down of like this very strange tree, but it also has like humanoid faces, female faces in it, and then it comes down to the speakers for the tree is what I was calling them in my head, and it was that part specifically was so cool that they like kind of wave around naturalistically, and then they like conform and meld and mesh together, and then like separate and stuff. I was like, this is cool. This is really neat animation.
But
yeah,
I don't know. I mean, like it's at least worth a watch if you're looking for something kind of different and you don't necessarily want to watch like a Ghibli or something of that nature. If you want like a Ghibli adjacent, this is pretty
Ghibli
cool.
adjacent.
Yeah, and honestly, I think if you're in the mood to watch something that's interesting but not necessarily like amazing, I think I would probably recommend it. It's not, once again, it's not great. And it has a lot of issues, particularly around its characters. I just don't care about most of them. Yeah. But like, at least watching it is very fun, and watching the animation and watching a lot of the really cool like old style art backgrounds and stuff like that is really
neat. It's definitely not my favorite thing that Gonzo's put out. There's a lot of other really neat, flashy things I'd rather watch by them, but it's it's interesting.
Yeah.
Anything else you guys want to say about it? We figured this would be a short one.
Most of the staff was pretty fresh, as in most of them were new.
Really?
And I've never had another role after this. So
That's
Oh no!
that's
thought
interesting.
you were building me up. Yeah, I was like, I was getting really excited that I was like, oh, it's their first project. This is actually a really good first project. And then I expected them to like move on to bigger and better things and like work within the industry. Now you just made me really
I mean, they've
sad.
done other stuff. It's just they're not their assigned roles, whatever they were. So,
Okay.
so some.
That's a shame. This isn't like that bad of a film that they were like, okay, well,
I mean,
you're not doing
Gonzo
that.
after 2007 kind of disappeared for a while anyway.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
there was
true.
some weird
yeah,
shit
and
going
when they
on.
came back, they weren't doing anything like the stuff that they were doing
Yeah,
before.
they kind of pivoted pretty hard.
So that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Uh,
And I mean, like, it was pretty fair. From the stats that I was able to pull up, like, the movie was pretty fairly received, honestly,
yeah,
as
it's
far as like
decent.
audiences and critics went. So
I looked up a couple of things about critical reception.
Yeah.
One of them being Wikipedia. So, but it was like just generally, it didn't seem like that bad. Mal users even like it, which is saying something because they're okay. But yeah, it's like it didn't seem that bad. So I'm happy to hear that it at least did decent. When
Most
it
of
first
the
came out.
critiques I saw are things that we've already stated, mostly with the characters and the rushed, undetailed story. That was most of the complaints that I saw.
Yeah. Yeah, I liked what you said, Zach, about Blue Submarine #6 because I think that's a good comparison.
it gave me a lot of those vibes.
The reason,
One of the art designers
Yeah,
from Blue
honestly,
Submarine #6 worked on this, so
Oh, well, okay. Well, that explains it then.
there you go.
Okay.
but outside of that, I like that comparison because like honestly, I was thinking about that when you said that. I was like, yeah, if Blue Submarine #6 was instead of being like I think it's only 5 episodes.
I think it's
or
like
something
4 or 5,
Yeah,
something around
4,
there.
I think.
Yeah, if it had been like if it had been shortened to this length, like an hour and 20, so like or yeah, now like an hour and 20 minutes. It's
Yeah,
not
it
that
would have
long.
been some pretty solid
if it had-
combo.
Yeah, because Blue Submarine #6, the reason why I think it succeeds compared to this is that it actually does, outside of its characters, flesh its world out. That was the big thing, fleshing that world out. And then getting a little bit of extra time to flesh out the characters as well, even if it's not like a lot. But yeah, that's an interesting comparison. I like that one.
Yep.
But that's good.
Anyway.
Can't
That's
spell
pretty cool.
character without care.
Okay. Or Char, Sunly Gundam. Okay. Well, if there's nothing else, I guess we'll catch everybody
All
for
right.
the next one.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye, y'all.